After 65 years in business, TransAsia Airways announced without warning in November 2016 that it was suspending all flights and closing down. The move cost 1,700 employees their jobs and affected more than 100,000 passengers with prior boarding bookings on TransAsia flights.
Some in the industry are wondering whether TransAsia's collapse might foreshadow tougher times for other Taiwanese carriers, or whether it was simply the result of free market forces. Others are asking if the government should have played a role in managing the airline's collapse. Our Sunday special report.
At the beginning of November last year, domestic carrier TransAsia Airways was at the Taipei International Travel Fair pushing big discounts on fares. Just a month earlier, the airline celebrated the start of service on a new route to Sendai, Japan, and was promising future flights to Fukuoka, Japan, and Busan, South Korea.
In line with our opening of this new destination, we are hoping to help our company return to normal operations by the first quarter of next year, by optimizing the utilization of our capacity.
But not long after TransAsia Chairman Vincent Lin made that statement, the airline suddenly announced it would dissolve, in a considerable surprise to outside observers.
Accumulated losses over the first 3 quarters of the year surpassed 2.2 billion NT dollars. We are not optimistic about our prospects going forward. As a result, we have no choice but to make the difficult and painful decision to announce the dissolution of the company.
Analysts have concluded that the most direct factor in TransAsia's demise was the 1.2 billion NT dollars in compensation the company had to pay out as part of settlements in 2 deadly crashes in 2014 and 2015. Those incidents in turn corroded passengers' trust in TransAsia, which saw its percentage of seats sold fall from around 80% to only 65%. In 2014, TransAsia invested 2 billion NT dollars in a new budget carrier named V Air. The subsidiary only lasted for 1.5 years before closing in September 2016 with accumulated losses of more than 900 million NT dollars.
对于复兴来讲，它刚好是在中间的区块。
TransAsia positioned itself at a middle-of-the-road price point, but about 4 years ago it moved to restructure and created V Air to focus on a lower price point. But when that failed, it had no way to actively move back up to a higher price point, and its economy class service gradually began to overlap with low-budget airline services.
With Spartan in-flight dining services, fewer flight attendants on board, and routes limited to around 4 hours or less, budget airlines can afford to sell tickets at only 30 to 70% of the price of conventional airlines. Those prices have attracted plenty of passengers on shorter local flights. Since 2004, when Jetstar Asia started direct flights between Taipei and Singapore, 20 budget airlines have entered the domestic market, offering 32 different routes, with the fiercest price competition on routes to and from Northeast Asia.
我看到它这几年来，有些 LCC 也转型去飞所谓的中长程的。
In the last few years, we've seen some low-cost carriers change to flying mid-distance and longer routes. Others have added their own business class and even first-class cabins. But no matter what the future effects of those changes are, we've noticed one thing, which is that they will continue to try and develop new sources of potential customers.
According to the Civil Aeronautics Administration, combined passenger volume on the 20 budget carriers operating in Taiwan already accounts for 12.8% of all domestic airline passengers. They're putting increasing pressure on Taiwan's more established airlines, even as they bring large numbers of tourists into the country.
我觉得是在服务的品质上要做一个明显的区隔跟差异。
I think that if you want to clearly differentiate yourself when it comes to the quality of your services, you can look to many airlines, especially EVA Air and China Airlines, which are constantly upgrading their airplanes and increasing passenger comfort in their various classes of service.
Beyond airlines needing to improve their operations and finding new sources of customers, the government also is trying to extend a helping hand. The new policy that came into effect on August 1, 2016, gives citizens of Thailand and Brunei 30-day visa-free travel to Taiwan. The goal is to spur business across the tourism sector, from airlines to tourism operators, and from hotels to restaurants.
在近5年，我们开始向这个东南亚新兴市场。
Over the past 5 years, we've started to develop Southeast Asia as a new source of tourists. We're talking about Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, and other countries in the region, as well as India, Dubai, and the Middle East. We're hoping to increase the 1.42 million yearly visitors coming to Taiwan from Southeast Asia by 20%. We estimate that would increase annual domestic tourism revenues by about 13 billion Taiwan dollars.
The success of the government's initiatives to open up new sources of tourists and stimulate the domestic airline industry is yet to be seen. But the passing into history of TransAsia, Taiwan's first privately owned carrier established in 1951, has already sent a warning to the rest of the country's carriers that they must adapt to the times in order to survive.